yourself with a crusade. Tattoo the Earth.
Welcome back to Podioslave Tattoos the Earth. We are here for episode 2. So if you came in last week, listen to episode 1 where we had Fran, Strine and Kevin Lyman, Naomi Fabricant, and Mike Bellamy for a retrospective on the behind the scenes folks from Tattoo the Earth tour in 2000. Now you're going to get some bands. We had Derrick Green of Sepultura and Myron from Workhorse Movement tonight. And, it was fun to get the industry perspective, the behind-the-scenes perspective last week. Tonight we get on the stage. That's pretty exciting, right, guys?
And the thing is both sides, different perspective, same level of shenanigans, same level of craziness, which, if you've read Scott's book, Caravan of Pain, it all checks out. So everyone has this, unique but similar experience of a true Caravan of Pain in this like Summer Misfits tour.
Yeah, different perspectives, different stories, different levels of PTSD, whatever you want to call it. Phenomenal. And we're going to get into it right now with Derrick Green of Sepultura.
All right. So Derrick Green, thank you for joining us on the podcast. And I don't say this to every guest, but this is a true honor for us to have you on the podcast.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Appreciate that.
So we're here to kind of reminisce about the past, a little Tattoo the Earth. And I think context is always key. So the tour happened in 2000. You joined Sepultura just a couple years before. Mm-hmm. And you had toured with those guys. I know, Slayer tours, VOD tours, Earth Crisis tours. So like, how did that compare to Tattoo the Earth? Before we dive into Tattoo the Earth, like how did that compare? Did that set the stage for you, or were you ready?
I think by then I was ready. I was ready in the moment for sure. I was excited about touring the States because I think you mentioned that we toured with Slayer before that, maybe. I'm not sure if it was before Tattoo the Earth or after, but it might have been before. Slayer, Systems of a Down, and us, and that was in Europe, and that was a great preparation for going on to do anything, especially playing in front of Slayer fans. Their most intense, heartfelt fans as far as believing in their band and staying true to them, and that was a challenge, and it was great. I don't think it went so well for Systems of a Down. It was a little more difficult, but I believe that, I gained a great deal of respect for them because they came on every night, despite the fact that, Slayer fans were extremely cruel, to say the least. Not every show, but I was like, wow, and I really liked that first album from Systems of a Down. It was fantastic. For me at the time, I was like, my God, this is really, really good. I'm looking forward to seeing this live. But I realized that was like their first tour. They sucked it up and did it. They really like faced the crowd every night. And I was just like, man, I got to give it to these guys. And It was great to see the development of them grow. So I was ready to do anything at that time. I joined the band. I didn't have kids. I was super young. I was, waiting to have that opportunity to play on a big stage with my idols, certain bands like Slayer and things like that. So I was just, and especially in the US, touring around the US is something extremely exciting, special. And I had no idea what to expect. I don't think anybody did. So, and also the great tattoo artists that were on the tour as well. It was just so much going on, so much energy, and so much innocence, I think, in a lot of ways, just everyone just willing to do this and give it a go. And I was ready, man. I had no idea what to expect from Slipknot because, I was spending a lot of time in Europe and in Brazil and in Europe. I wasn't living in the US anymore, so I didn't really know what was happening. And I was like, why is this band is headlining the festival? It's like over Slayer. I was like, come on.
In 2000.
I was like, what? It's like something is very, very wrong here, And I was just super naive to the fact that I was like, oh, wow, there's a lot of very young kids, at the show And I was like, this is something cool to see. It's something needed in a scene, to have I Was Young going to shows, and they had a mass amount of that generation behind them, and I was like, this is impressive. I gained respect right after seeing a few shows. I was like, holy shit, this is something very new and exciting.
So you join the band, you're on tour for a couple of years, and then you guys hear about Tattoo the Earth, and it had to have been pitched to you by somebody. What is your first thought? What's your gut reaction to that?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Let's fucking
I was
do
like,
it.
hell yeah. I was like, Slayer. Like, again, I was like, Slayer doing it. We're going to do it.
Nice.
I was like, of course, It was like, and then there was like, Paul Booth, Philip Blue, some of the best tattoo artists at the time. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. In my mind, I was like, this is going to be epic. And it was, it was definitely an incredible experience.
So Derrick, our listeners can't see it, but you're wearing a hat that says tattoo on it. So the tattoo world was very much something you were familiar with at that point in time, right?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of friends of mine were tattoo artists, and I mean, it was just something that was very normal for me to be around a lot of people who were tattooed or just being knowledgeable about very good artists. So that was exciting that they had actually picked incredibly talented artists from around the world, and piercers as well. And so it was awesome. It was really a time to get to know people, and it was something I'd never been done before. So it was great to be a part of history being made.
And speaking of not being done before, it also had its, I guess, downsides too, right? Because the festival was banned in Boston. The show we wanted to go to was banned.
Sons of bitches. Yeah. There was a lot of things that were happening. I was just so naive and so excited about being there. I was like, whatever, I'm here. Like shows would be canceled or something that happened. I was like, oh, that's too bad. But I'm out on the road and we're doing this. My attitude was very, just excited to be a part of it. So for me, even with the bad things that were happening, it was just like, okay, we'll just roll with the punches, and hopefully the next day everything will go well. But it was very positive. PMA, I was just like that positive mental attitude all the time.
So you guys were tapped for the main stage, which is obviously pretty exciting for you, I would think, and being fairly new to the band. You've done a couple of tours, but now you're going out on this kind of wild festival that first time it's ever been done, and you're going to be main stage with some heavy hitters. What's that like for you personally?
It was intense because we hadn't toured the US that much. It was still that kind of phase of people trying to figure out, like, who is this new guy singing in Sepultura? Like, very skeptical and just having to prove myself. But I already knew I would be in that position joining the band. It was like, I get in the band and everything's going to be fantastic, and I'm going to forget about everything that ever happened. I was like, definitely not naive to the fact that I had to like prove myself, and it would take a few albums to get into it, and to get a relationship playing with the guys that I was with, and getting to know them better, because it's just happening very fast. Like you're saying, I joined the band only 2 years before that, 98, the end of 98. And then 99 just dove into doing tons of press. At that time you do press tours, and we did that all around the world. And then, getting used to touring and being on stage together, them getting used to it too. It's completely different formation for them, playing all these new songs and just working with a whole different configuration of even crew people, management. So there was a lot going on, but again, it was just super exciting for me. And I don't know if I really realized how much I was getting into it, because I knew that Sepultura were big within my mind and around the people I knew. But you got to realize that there wasn't really that much internet going on.
Right.
So once like traveling to Brazil or traveling to another country, I was like, holy shit.
Yep.
Right.
People fucking know this band, like, in the middle of God knows where. And there's like thousands and thousands of people and shows all over. South America or in Europe, and I was like, oh my God, this is insane. You know, it's much bigger than I imagined. So just going through all that was just really what I wanted to get into. You know, I was really open to, yeah, I'll live in Brazil. You know, I moved to Brazil, and I'll learn Portuguese. I'll do whatever, you know, because I knew that I wanted to live outside the US. I had no problem with that. At a very young age, I knew I wanted to live somewhere else, to experience something else. I mean, we had an exchange student stay at our house when I was very young, and that person was from Chile. And I was just fascinated with them. You know, I was just like, wow, this is crazy. I lived in at that time, an all Black neighborhood. I didn't know any white people. I was like 7 or 8 years old. And it was this girl, it was my sister's age, 10 years older than I am. So she was just going to an all Black school, just like, hey, I'm from Chile. This is great. You know, like my first time. And oh my God, I can't fit into my pants anymore. You know, I was like, yeah, welcome to America. That's processed food.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was like, it blew my mind. Like, I never forgot. I was just like, wow. I was like, she was so cool. Like, what are these? I was just, you know, so many questions. So I was like, yeah, when I joined the band, I'm going to live outside of the US, move to Brazil. And it was awesome to come back to the States and get offered this tour. It was just really being able to see America in a different way.
One thing I'm really curious about, because we didn't get to go just by age. I think we
Right.
were 16 to 18. I think we were on the verge of stealing our parents' cars to get down to Suffolk Downs in Boston. So how are the crowds? Because I think it's important to note that there's like the new metal upcoming heroes in Slipknot on the tour. There's thrash gods in Slayer. There's the groove metal gods with you guys. There's Nashville Pussy, which doesn't really fit in. I mean, there's Head PE, Hatebreed, who's
Seven Dust,
Hatebreed on the verge of taking over the world. You know, so how were the crowds? Was it pretty mixed?
Yeah, it was definitely a mixed crowd, but I think that Slayer and Slipknot, of course, had the crowd, but like I said, there was this definite age difference that you could tell. You know, there was a lot of young kids there for Slipknot. You know, they were dressed up in the outfits, you know, in the mask, and they were listening to every word that Corey said. You know, it'd be like, okay, everybody's going to get down and bow down, and now we're all going to jump up and be crazy. And I was like, oh, they're really listening, you know, like following orders very well. And it was new to me. You know, I'd never seen that. You know, with Slayer, you just have the older, like, yes, everybody doing their own thing, just kind of like yelling Slayer over and over again. And so it was really a awesome mix, actually. It was like, it reminded me of a proper festival that you would see in Europe, because they've always been mixed. You know, I was like, finally, I was just like, this is cool. You know, I figured that most of the festivals that would be happening in the US should be like this, you know, but I think the crowd it was a great mix of people that were there. So it made it very interesting and fun, you know, all the time, just constant fun.
And speaking of the bands too, you know, you were talking about System of a Down earlier, and seeing them for the first time on that tour, similar to this, was this the first time seeing, you mentioned Slipknot, Head PE, Seven Dust, was this the first run with those guys as well? Yeah,
it was the first time seeing a lot of those bands. Like Seven Dust I had never heard of. Head PE, I didn't know any bands. Like Mudvayne, I was like, ooh, like I had literally just been so focused and outside of the country that I was just completely all new to me. And I was like, wow, this is intense. Hatebreed were really cool because I knew them from the hardcore scene and stuff like that. So I knew that we wanted to tour with them eventually. After that tour, we're like, oh man, we should bring Hatebreed on tour.
Nice.
And did a tour with them in the US. And then after, we were like, let's go to Europe with them, you know, because they had never been at that time. And like you said, they were just breaking free. Like when we took them to Europe, it was their first time. And then they went back a second time. And that's when they really popped off. So it was great just to be surrounded by people or bands I didn't know who were really hungry as well and just doing their own thing. each band had their own style. Like you said, Nashville Pussy. I was like, wow, I grew to really like them and seeing them perform and just having a lot more respect for these bands that had different styles.
And you got to know them too, right? Because you're on tour with them, so you got to actually get to meet them and hang out with them. And the perspective is crazy because you're from the U.S., but you were living in Brazil, so this was all new to you. You mentioned the internet was not, you weren't really using the internet that much. Therefore, like you're flying back into the country to a scene that's very present. It's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it was something that I never would have imagined. So I figured, after that whole thing happened with Tattoo the Earth, as bad or as crazy as many things were happening, there was the idea of doing it in Europe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so then I was like, okay, this is where it's going to be really, really cool, because I know Europe is a little more lenient with a lot of different things. And the lineup was insane. I was like, okay, they're going to have Pantera on it because Pantera is still around. I was like, oh my God, this is so sick.
Mm-hmm.
I already knew that the guys in my band had already toured with Pantera, and they were like, that was one of the best tours they did. And Ministry, I think it was in Helmet, where it's like one whole lineup. And I was super stoked. I was like, okay, gonna get a chance to tour with Pantera. I was like a big fan, and oh man, I was just like, this is gonna be amazing. And then 9/11 happened.
Ooh, yeah.
And then everyone was like, we're not flying. And I was like, no, this is the time we should fly. I was like, this will never happen again. Like, I was like, this is something so, no. It's like, now we should fly. I was like, everything will be, but people were terrified. They had no clue what was going on. So nobody wanted to fly. And I was like, all right, this. And then, Pantera broke up. And
Right. It's funny you say, we had a question coming up here in just a second that was, when you left the tour, did you think, what the fuck, or did you think, I want more of that? You clearly wanted more of that, which is pretty awesome. Like, I love the energy. Like, man, it would have been dope to see that tour in Europe, especially with the crowds, the way that they kind of pop off for the heavy music. And
oh, yeah. I mean, I was definitely excited. I wanted to do more. I wanted to tour as much as possible, but especially with diverse tours, it's something that had never been done before, like I was saying. So it was, that excitement of being part of something like that. So when I heard about the possibility of it happening again, I was like, wow, that's really cool. Because anyone I've ever talked to have been super excited about the idea, and they're like, yeah, that would be cool to have something like that. So it's always been, the idea itself has always been appealing to so many people, especially nowadays. It would be fantastic.
So I'm really curious, how did tours after that compare to Tattoo the Earth? Because you had a couple dynamics. You were relatively new to the band, so some of those experiences were new to you, but then also there's the backdrop that this was, as Scott, the founder of the tour, said, Caravan of Pain. Like, you're in rodeos, you're in golf domes. It's like,
oh yeah,
very unique experience. So, like, the couple following tours after this, like, how did it compare?
I mean, it was brutal. I mean, it wasn't that brutal because we had a tour bus. So you got to remember, I was playing in bands like maybe 3 years before, traveling in a van. So I was like, we're on a tour bus, there's air conditioning.
Right.
But outside, the elements were like harsh. It was just like a dust bowl somewhere in Arizona, or dying from heat stroke. It was just super hot and nothing covering the stage at some places. So yeah, those conditions were pretty rough. And I was a vegetarian then. I'm a vegan now. I think that was rough, like food. I just remember eating just not very well. I'm sure there wasn't anything like Whole Foods or anything like that. Right. It was just like, I'll have a burger without the burger. And it's just like weird stuff. And yeah, those conditions are harsh. And for bands that didn't have a tour bus or traveling in a van or something else, yeah, not easy
did
at
some
all.
bands drop off too?
I'm sure they did.
Or some didn't even start. Like, I think Cold Chamber was scheduled to be there. They never even.
Oh wow!
Like,
yeah,
it didn't work out. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with them, but I remember there was even one show that was Stone Temple Pilots played, and it was at the very beginning of it, but they didn't continue onward as well. So yeah, it was just a little bit of chaos, but a fun chaos. But tours, I mean, for us, I mean, after we're just, I mean, Sepultura is a very particular band as far as being able, fortunately, we've been able to play various places that a lot of bands aren't able to play, as far as like very small countries or countries where they normally don't have shows. So our tours vary. A lot of times we weren't touring the US that much because it's not easy to tour the US and make a profit. You usually end up in the red for numerous reasons. Just the pricing of everything is just twice as much compared to Europe. And it's a huge country. And in the middle of the country, it's not as populated. So the shows are going to be different. And so it was always difficult for us also because we also had to pay for visas, lawyer fees, things like that for our crew, for the band. So we're, you know, start off in the red on a tour. So it's just like, let's stick to touring a lot of, you know, everywhere else in the world. So tours were great. I mean, we did a tour in South America around that time after with Metallica. So that was like a completely different level, you know, it was like stadiums, like football stadiums. So it was just like, whoa, like completely blown away. And just, you know, with our idols, you know, it's just like, this is absolutely insane. To doing like our own tours in Europe and all over the world. And I mean, just crazy places, you know, just ended up going places like India and Indonesia and just doing as much as we could, you know, like really wanting to live up to all the challenges that were presented in front of us and just do it. So it was wonderful, you know, being able to have the chance to do that.
Nice. So Tattoo the Earth's done. You've been in the band for now, you know, two years or so. Did you still see yourself, or today, like, did you see yourself being in the band today still after all that time? Back then, do you think that you were going to, like, 2022, you're talking to us about being in Sepultura for 20 years?
Wow, yeah. That's funny. I guess so. I mean, I knew at a very young age I started playing music, or at least playing in bands at like 14, 15, going to shows. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Like I had in my mind, and I was just really focused on it. There was no idea about money or anything like that. It was just really the sheer enjoyment of being on stage and being in that scene. You know, I just loved it. I knew that it felt good and I felt comfortable in it. So when I did join the band and I started to get more comfortable being with the guys and living in Brazil, I just felt that we could continue onward and do so much more. You know, I've become more confident. I think we all did as a band, and we just continued on the same path, and it was just going in a very strong pattern of touring, writing, getting to know each other better, getting a better understanding of the dynamics of the group. You know, it even worked that way up until then Igor left the band. And then it was just like these up and then like, oh my God, like, what are we going to do? And then finding another drummer, building that again. And then that person leaving. I was just like, oh my God. Like, you know, at those times, I thought like, it might be over. But in my mind, I always knew that we didn't want to quit. You know, we always wanted to continue onward because we loved so much what we were doing and we really believed in it. And we still do. And so, you know, finding Eloy, you know, it's just been, again, that evolution. I feel that we're like, okay, we have this incredible combination. And I feel that we're at a very good time, you know, better than we've ever been. And it's wonderful that we really stuck with it. You know, I can see that, you know, from doing tours now and playing shows and speaking with people. I've noticed the difference, you know, even with like old songs at the very beginning when I joined the band, that old like Derrick Green era songs, like old songs, playing those songs, you know, getting response from people like, I grew up with that. It's been 20 years. So there's people that have actually like this is what I got into when I was blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's a whole generation change of people. And then you still have the older fans that are there. But then we have a younger generation, much younger, and it's a great mix. And I'm glad that we're able to appeal to an older crowd and a younger crowd, you know, to stay relevant in what's going on at the time. So that was the main objective I wanted to see in the future when I first joined the band, to see that evolution of getting, you know, better at our instruments and just gaining that respect, you know, from the whole like metal scene and world, you know, just paying our dues again, you know.
Yeah, hell yeah.
We had Jesse Leach on here from Killswitch Engage.
Jesse's the best. Yeah.
He is awesome. And he was paying respects to Howard Jones, and they went on tour together recently as well. And same thing, you know, it's like paying respect to two different or, you know, parts of the band and that legacy and the appreciation for the fans, really. Absolutely.
I mean, that's so important to pay that respect to a lot of the stuff in the past and the present, you know, like, you know, our goal is to play those songs to the best of our ability. And it's absolutely a challenge, but it's such a joy still to play all those songs. You know, each show is still a little different from the last. It's always going to be different. It's never going to be the same show. So when people ask a lot of times, don't you get tired of playing that song or this song? It's like, no, each time it's different, you know, it's always different and it's wonderful. You know, it's a great feeling. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the legacy's there. I mean, Gojira covers Territory on the latest tour, you know, so I mean, there you have it.
Yeah. I mean, those guys have always been really cool. We've seen them come to our shows in France, and we have a lot of respect for them, and they're incredible, man. They're incredible band, musicians, people. And, you know, I would love to do a tour with them. Hopefully that can happen, because I think it would be a great mix. And I love seeing that, you know.
Derrick, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. And I'm sorry I messed up
the
initial date. I was like, wait a minute, it's Memorial Day. Why did I agree to do a podcast on Memorial Day? I was like, I'm an idiot. All right. Thank you, guys.
We appreciate you. Thanks.
Thanks, Derrick.
All right. Next up, we have Myron from Workhorse Movement. They played the second stage back in 2000 on the tour, and Workhorse Movement making their way as a second stage band with the Tattoo the Earth Caravan of Pain. Check out Myron right here.
All right, Myron, thanks for coming on the podcast tonight. We're stoked to have you on and geek out a little bit. Just to kind of start it off, it's interesting. Did you think that you were going to be talking about this crazy, the way we look at it, like almost like a high school summer camp rager 22 years later?
Yeah. way in the rearview mirror, man, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, it was a blur as it was at the time. And then 10 years later, you talk about it even and you know, barely remember some of the things. Like, what? Are you kidding me? I don't remember that at all. But yeah, so to be talking about it this much longer, you know, into the future is pretty bizarre.
Yeah, it's like a high school reunion. Someone's bringing up a really crazy story with Polaroids. You're like, oh, shit, that did happen.
100%. Yeah, it's all pictures. Too, like,
Right. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I remember what's funny is I've got a few selfies with a 35 millimeter camera. You know, I mean, I'm like, how was I taking selfies back then? You know, like it'd be me with like Kerry King in the background, you know, just to get a picture. I got this big stupid camera with a big flash on it trying to get Kerry King and, you know, behind me or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
You're ahead of the times, because selfies, I mean,
they weren't a thing.
I mean,
yet.
we didn't know what they were back then. But.
My band used to make so much fun of me because I'd take these selfies with like one eye, you know, like I'd be like one eye and whoever behind me. There's hundreds of them, dude. I've got them like Ted Nugent, just weird shit like that, you know? Like, no, another one eye shot, dude, you know? And then 20 years later, everybody's taking selfies. So I might have been, I better been the start of something.
Yeah, no, you started it. We're gonna go with that for sure.
Yeah.
So let's dial back to just before Tattoo the Earth. What's going on with the Workhorse Movement at that point? Are you guys looking to get on tours like that? Are you, putting music out? What are you doing?
A long time on the road with Disturbed. That, you know, when the sickness broke, that was us and them just out, just trashing nightclubs at the time, you know. And then their song hit, and we were, with them. So it was like everything turned into much better accommodations, the whole thing, bigger venues. So that was a good 2 or 3 months before Tattoo the Earth. And I remember coming home exhausted, and getting a call like this next day, like, you guys want to do Slayer? Because I don't think Slipknot was I hadn't heard that Slipknot was part of this. It was just, you guys want to go tour with Slayer? I'm like, yeah, for sure, So like I slept for one day and thought, oh, here we go. We're going back out with even, crazier people. So, and then that whole thing grew to, what it turned into, which was Tattoos and everybody on that tour, man. So
I'm curious, like, what do you think led to you guys getting that call? Was it the Roadrunner connection? Because at that point you were on Roadrunner, right?
It was the Roadrunner connection, 100%.
Yeah.
Those, Sepultura, all those bands were just, we're all beating around the same places, and we were the new up and coming one, So our album was coming out, and they had to push us. So put us with the rest of the Roadrunner bands, especially Slipknot. The press around them and the whole thing, that made sense to put us right in there too. Hey, you're talking to these guys. Well, here's the new guys that we got. So piggybacked with them. It was pretty good timing. So
when you got the call, you said it was Slayer. Was that it? Was it just Slayer, or did you get the whole gamut?
Our manager for about a week. I'm like, awesome, we're going with Slayer. And then as we heard the details of the tour, we heard Slipknot, Hatebreed, all these other bands were on it too. But our manager knew we were huge Slayer fans, so he was like, "You guys want to do Slayer?" Yes, for sure.
Nice.
And then all the details came out. So I'm sure Slipknot was, right at the very top of the planning at the beginning. So, but yeah, I can remember being just pumped playing Slayer for we just came off 3 months of blowing our eardrums out with Disturbed, and all I could do was play Slayer, like in the car, in the house. I couldn't stop. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
So was your gut reaction basically like, we're going on this tour with Slayer, like all this tattoo and touring and fucking DIY festival? Was that just like, whatever, it'll probably work, I'm just stoked to go on?
Fine, yeah. Whatever. Yeah, I can go just be backstage watching Slayer. That was my biggest gig, was just not watching a show from out front, watching it from the side, man.
Yeah.
that was the biggest payment for me, for sure.
When you guys get the lay of the land as far as what the festival is going to be with the tattoos and being in some alternative venues because of where you could get at the time, and some places not even allowing you to do the tattoo stuff, what were you guys thinking? Were you guys like, this is amazing, this is awesome, or how is this going to work? Yeah, for sure, amazing. Just seeing Paul Booth and Guy Etchison and seeing those names, I'm like, we're getting tattoos, man. Just there's no way I'd ever end up over in Europe to go get a Paul Booth tattoo. So just having him sitting at the lunch tent every day is pretty sweet, So yeah, we were pumped about it, man. It was everybody's raving about it. We were out with Kitty before Disturbed, and they ended up on Ozfest. We're like, yeah, this one's gonna be a backyard brawl there. This one's gonna be cooler, So Yep.
All right, so you guys were on the second stage. You guys, I looked at the set times, and Scott, he put together the book Caravan of Pain. Yep. You guys, could have started your set anywhere between like noon and 3. What are you guys doing the rest of the day? Just checking out bands? You getting tattooed? What was going on?
All of it, man. It rotated. They had a schedule for us that I think the first show was my birthday in Portland Meadows, and that's the one that Stone Temple Pilots hopped on, which was awesome, because I think the deal for them to jump on, they had to pay for a bunch of the amenities. They had to pay for the lunch tent, and there was a stripper tent, and all the kegs and beer and stuff. So that's my birthday. I pull into Portland. I'm like, this is amazing, and we got the later slot the first day, so it was like, we played at 5 o'clock or something, really late. And then the next day you would move to the bottom of the list. And then the next day you'd go from noon. Then the next day, 1, next day would be 2. So you kind of rotated through, all the up and coming bands got a shot at being, more in the middle of the day, better slot. It went around. So yeah, you knew what you were doing the next day. If you played at noon, you knew tomorrow we were playing at 1. Next day you're playing at 2.
So you knew how late you could stay up.
We never considered how late we could stay. And what was crazy is we did not take a tour bus on that tour. And I can vaguely remember the conversations. There was just so much more money in it for us if we just took our van and trailer, and our management was going to hook us up with hotels. We're like, well, that would be different. We don't have to follow the bus schedules. You know, I mean, Slayer would pull out at 10 o'clock and start heading for the next town. We'd stay in town with like hundreds of people and party all night, and then try to get up at, you know, we better get out of here 6:30 in the morning. We got to get to Phoenix, man. You know, so we're driving through the desert at 8 in the morning. Whoever's the most sober, and we won tons of fans that way because we were the only band out of whatever 12 bands that stayed and partied.
Nice.
And we'd end up in the parking lots. Like occasionally, Hatebreed would stick back too. So, but they had their own bus and they would stay too. So we'd be doing like a tailgate party out in the parking lot in Houston or something. All these kids just hanging out with us, and you know, Hatebreed's playing Johnny Cash songs on their acoustic guitars, and
I want to hear that.
That was our marketing plan. You know, that was how we got more fans. We just stayed back and partied, man. So, and it was every night, dude. That was a big reason we ended up not lasting very long, because we were just fried. You know, we had no breaks. We couldn't slow down at all. So,
100 miles an hour.
100, yeah, all the time, man.
Kind of like paint the picture pretty nicely for an early slot, because then you get the whole rest of the day to do whatever you want. And then instead of the tour bus, you have a hotel, you got a nice clean bed, you get a shower. It's the tour buses, you're in a bunk. You don't get to shower. You can't even take a shit on the bus.
Can't take a shit, yeah. Sid from Slipknot kept getting kicked off his bus, so he didn't upright. And he wanted to stay back and party, so he'd stay with us, and then we'd play, you know, freaking Wu-Tang on the Xbox all the way to the next city, and he'd bang on the side of the van. I got kicked out again, man. You know, so
That's awesome.
yeah, that was cool. Oh shit.
Yeah, that's so. Any other like crazy memorable moments? That was there a certain party, a certain city that it was turned up even more? Or
I mean, you know, that Golf Dome in Chicago was wild because that place was running out of oxygen. And we were running out of oxygen because we had Cypress Hill in our little backstage area, so we were smoking down with them with no oxygen. You know, like we're like 10 times higher than normal because it's those guys, and there's like 10% oxygen in this freaking building. I remember people all getting sleepy and shit. That was wild. Probably the craziest one though was, I think we were somewhere in Texas and headed to Red Rocks, and Nashville Pussy, their bus driver, fell asleep and swiped a semi coming at him, just filleted the side of the bus open. I mean, like, filleted it open. They could have had, you know, head-on crash. And, of course, they were running late. I think they were supposed to go on before us, and we ended up going on a little early. We got off the stage, and they come rolling in, dude, and it looked like freaking Godzilla sliced open the side of their bus. They kept driving, like, through the night.
Wow.
And made it there, but that could have been disastrous, you know, if they'd hit it head on. But that was crazy. I can still see that bus with a big slice in the side of it, you know.
These stories are so intense, but I'm starting to get a little desensitized because that's just threw it in there like, yeah, they kept driving, you know, no big deal.
Dude, it was every day. Like, I mean, every day was like, it was, you know, months of just the same shit, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, near-death experiences. So that's my next question. This tour compared to the Disturbed, the Kitty tour prior, and then the tours after, like, how does this compare? Is this one of a kind, I take it?
Yeah, this one was a little more dangerous, I would say. You know, it was more dangerous. There was just so many moving parts and so many people coming and going that, you know, a group would get tired of partying, but there'd be another 12 that like, dude, we're hanging with you guys tonight. So it just, that one, you know, if we felt like a night that had to slow down with Disturbed, everybody sort of just goes, we're going back, you know. The Tattoo the Earth thing there's 1,000 people around at all times every night, you know. So it was a madhouse, man.
Does it ever get competitive? You know, like you want to win over more fans than the other bands or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I remember every night hitting the stage or every day hitting the stage with just the 5 of us thinking we had to keep up with Slipknot. That was our goal. Like, can we drop it as heavy as them with a whole crew of dudes, you know? So it was, but everybody was all, you know, good-hearted stuff. Everybody, you know, was just trying to show the best they had, the heaviest they had, and it was a great competitive environment, man. I don't think I missed Hatebreed's set the whole summer. wherever they were
Nice.
on. I'm in an interview. I'm like, I can hear them warming up. All right, you cool, man? I'm out of here, you know. And I'd be on the side of the stage, and you know, every time I could see Slayer, I was sitting right next to Kerry King, and there was always a couple super hot chicks right next to Kerry King that were just hanging out. So I'd
Of course.
watch the hot chicks too, you know.
Did you get to be friends with, you mentioned the Cypress guys, any other bands that you really hit it off with?
Yeah, Hatebreed we hit it off huge with. Nashville Pussy, we were just whiskey drinking buddies, you know, at the end of that thing. You know, most of the bands that were on our stage, we were, you know, you're with them every day. So there was a brotherhood there. And then a couple, you know, like Sid, we hung out with Sid from Slipknot a lot just because he was always getting in trouble, and we were the last ones around, so we could get him to the next town if we had to.
That's awesome.
So,
But you know, the bigger guys, the Slipknot, Slayer, they were doing interviews all the time, or something was happening. They'd never really, you know, we'd have sections where we could hang out, you know, and go out and talk to fans or whatever. They were regimented. It was like from morning to night, they had something filling up their time the whole time. So
you kind of answered my question. My next question was going to be, you mentioned having, you know, an interview, but rushing off to catch Hatebreed. So there was some of that going on behind the scenes too. Like you'd be talking to probably local radio at the time or something like that,
every
just
day.
promoting.
Yeah. It was, you know, we'd have 3-4 hours of maybe 6-8 interviews because we were heavily into our push for our album. It came out in, I don't know, May or something like this. And that tour was the whole summer. So yeah, it was, you know, and a lot of it was wild because it was a lot of people interviewing us from overseas, like England, Germany. I have tons of articles from that era, and I can't read any of them because they're in German or they're in French. Yeah. So they'd have an interpreter. I'd give my interview, and then they'd send us the articles, and you couldn't tell what any of it said. They might have said we sucked. I don't know what, you know. I can read German.
So here we are 22 years later, and currently there's one off date scheduled in Massachusetts, Tattoo the Earth, one-off festival with Anthrax and Black Label Society. Does that surprise you that it's kind of getting resurrected? There's a little momentum behind it. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, it was surprising seeing that, you know, we were getting the emails about the show and just trying to see who's available, that kind of stuff. And then, you know, any of this kind of stuff, the podcasts, interviews. That's cool. I would have thought maybe there'd be a few more of the original bands. Yeah, I mean, Hatebreed's the only one I think I recognize from the original tour, and that makes sense. But, you know, I think it'd be cool to really do a reunion of that thing, see if you could get all that going down again. But
Maybe in 2023.
right on. Well, we're here, man.
That would be cool to get everybody back, or, you know, as many bands as you could back from that original 2000 lineup, and a lot of them are still active.
There were a lot of, you know, just smaller bands that people loved, man. I mean, you know, just all, you know, there were so many of them that they had some fanatical fans, and some of them just aren't even playing anymore. To dig them all out and let it all go down like that again would be pretty sweet, you know.
Yep.
So
That would be cool. Like you said, your band coming back together, and maybe even a stipulation like bands like Head PE, like, you know, you're invited back, but it has to be the original lineup, something like that.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah, totally. I mean, like go full on nostalgia, man. You know,
Yeah.
like just, you know, that'd be sweet.
Makes too much sense. That makes too much sense.
Might have to jog to do that, but holy shit, you know.
Yeah.
When was the last time Workhorse played? When was the last time you guys played as a band?
We did a reunion show it was before COVID, like 3 or 4 years ago, in the town. We all went to Central Michigan University, so we went back there and just threw one down, and it was cool. You know, it didn't take long. It took like a half a rehearsal. Like, I think we could do this in a second, man. So
Nice.
yeah, it was sweet. Don't know if I could do it day after day at that pace, though.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The late nights in the parking lot?
Yeah, it was like P90X or something back then.
Yeah, late nights in the parking lot would be good if it was like once a week.
Yeah, right. And then a hot tub and a hotel room for 3 days and just heal up. So
Not working on my Saturday night, not working on Monday or Tuesday.
no, yeah. One tour 1 day a week. That'd be cool. No, we do it. We just put the work in.
Yep. Awesome. All right, Myron, thank you for coming on with us to talk Tattoo the Earth, and we're excited for maybe, hey, who knows, 2023.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it, man. Nice jog down memory lane. Very cool.
Hell yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Myron.
All right.
We'll be in
Take
touch.
care, man. Later.
There you have it. Some backstage action with Derrick and Myron on the original Tattoo the Earth. Incredible stories and more to come.
I think the only thing that'll make all this better is if there's a documentary that comes out about this tour, because these guys are just painting this picture of fucking party all day, shenanigans at night. You know, some bands are leaving, some are staying, and it's just, you know, it's like 24/7 party around the world. Every time zone's covered with these guys, which is fucking awesome.
It's so true, man. It's been a blast to talk to folks on and around the 2000 date and some stuff coming up with the 2022 date. So really stoked for you guys to check this out. Tuan, what do we got next week?
Yeah, definitely. This has been episode 2. Next up, we have episode 3 next week with Brian Fair of Overcast, who's playing stage 2 of the 2022 festival, August 27th. And obviously, if Shadows Fall, I mean, let's not leave that out. And he's a great guest. You guys will love that conversation. We actually had him on for, what episode was it?
94, I believe.
94, our podcast, non-Tattoo the Earth series. Great conversation. Dude's so easy to talk to. You guys are going to love that. And then also we have Shannon Larkin, who was second stage for the original Tattoo the Earth with the band Amen. And then he certainly went on to be the drummer for Godsmack for the last, 20 years or whatever it's been. He's been in a million other bands. Just a great conversation. You guys are going to love that. We appreciate everyone hitting us up and checking out these episodes, and more to come after that.
I haven't said in a while. Peace, potheads.
Cheers, nerds.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to Podioslave. We are at Podioslave on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the places that you can find us on social media. Facebook, Podioslave Podcast. YouTube, Podioslave Podcast there. Email us at podioslavepodcast@gmail.com. And hey, if you want to become a supporter, click on the link at the bottom of the episode and give us $1, give us $5. It keeps the lights on, keeps us going. We really appreciate that stuff. Thank you.